Good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. On this week's show, my guest is Jason Hibbs, the producer and reporter for local PBS affiliate WGTE's Rethinking Jails and Justice podcast. We discussed how reimagining the role of jail in society can actually lead to some individuals not returning to jail after being released, and in some cases, save municipalities money.
This is the culmination of a larger nationwide project. More than 10 years ago, the MacArthur Foundation had this idea, and the local data really proved it to be true here in Lucas County, that you have a lot of people in your local county jails sitting there night after night who do not need to be there. It is causing them more harm in their personal life, with their relationships, their job, and it's also costing a lot of taxpayer money to keep them locked up when they're nonviolent offenders or the risk of that person offending again is really low. So that was kind of the thought that MacArthur had going into this. Can we safely reduce the jail population? And can we also reduce the racial and ethnic disparities within that population? So there were dozens and dozens of communities across the country that applied for this grant money, the Safety and Justice Challenge grant money. And there were about 20 or so that received like the highest tier of funding. Lucas County happened to be one of those communities. So about 10 years ago, the county commissioners at the time had to do a request, apply for the grant, so to speak. It was awarded, and they spent $5 million, not taxpayer dollars, but grant money from the MacArthur Foundation over 5 different strategies over 10 years. And this is the final strategy, which is like the amplification phase, which is basically just telling the community what they did, what they tried to do, and what didn't work so well. We are here not really to do like PR to put a positive spin on it, but to just kind of shine a light on all of it. What worked, what didn't work, and where do we go from here?
And it can't be understated how difficult it is to actually change public perception, because obviously people for many years have been informed by the narrative that everyone who's in jail is there for a reason, when in reality, it's much more complicated.
Yeah, and you also have the pendulum of society swinging back and forth. You had big movements after we saw video of so many unarmed Black people being shot by police. So you had, anti-police protests. But then on the other hand, we're hearing from some people in the community and some law enforcement that obviously that makes it hard to recruit for law enforcement. And, there are fewer people wanting to enter the profession, or they are worried about recruiting quality people. So it's walking that fine line of maintaining the order, making sure the people in the jail are those who need to be there. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just PR. And I will say that some of the criticism from the MacArthur Foundation for Lucas County was on the community piece. They say that there may have been a missed opportunity to connect with community organizations doing work on the ground. So, working in some of the communities some of the areas of Lucas County that really need a lot of attention. And we'll probably talk about that tonight. Some of these community groups received micro grants. And if I remember correctly, it was about $300,000 divided over. And one of the podcasts is on this, by the way. I did 10 podcasts, about 30 minutes each. And we looked at the different strategies. And on episode 8, we looked at the community organizations that received those micro grants. And a lot of the leaders said, the county just kind of gave them the money and then said, do what you will with it. And MacArthur Foundation says there's an opportunity to work with those community groups to try to foster that collaboration. And the opportunity is still there, I think.
And obviously, Lucas County is a county that really, it's kind of traditional, because we have a lot of elected officials and leaders that have been around the county for a long time. And sometimes that can breed a feeling of knowing that you're doing the right thing, when even though you have good intentions, there are still people that are not being reached. And so how has this project really helped to bridge the gap between those elected officials, as well as those community organizations, and of course, the public itself?
I think that that is probably the greatest shortcoming of this project. And this isn't just my analysis, but many of the people I interviewed for the podcast and the documentary, county leaders, said, yeah, we did not do a great job at informing the community of what the MacArthur grant is, what it isn't, how we're spending the money, and why. So WGTE, we are trying to get that message out there to share with the community. This is what they did. So I hope that tonight helps. But I think that everybody involved would probably admit that there's still a lot of work to be done on connecting community groups, community leaders with county leaders. And some of those community leaders aren't official. It may just be someone that people in the area know, just a respected elder in the community. But there needs to be that trust between the people in the community and the county, and that's where there's still some work to be done.
Yeah, and obviously in doing this podcast for WGT, you've gotten to dive into some of the numbers and dive into the different stories from this community. What were some things that were surprising to you, and what were some things that you wish more people knew?
I think that the community would be heartened if they knew how many people volunteering or people not getting paid much are working with the youth, working with the communities, trying to make the world a better place, or at least their corner of the world. There was a lot. I've only lived in this community for 4 years. I moved to Toledo 4 years ago, and I didn't know about a lot of the work going on. It's not well publicized. You have people just boots on the ground working hard. And I think the podcast, exposes some of that, takes people into that. But I think average citizen would be heartened if they knew there still are a lot of good people out there trying to do the right thing. And it makes me want to be a better community member. So yeah, I guess that's what I wish people knew. And I guess the other surprise would be, they have training. They have the crisis intervention training for law enforcement officers, the sheriff's department, the people who work in the jail. And they also had training in the other direction where, through a new diversion program, defendants who were arrested for interfering with law enforcement, basically anyone who had a negative interaction with police. So like if TPD is called out, or the Lucas County Sheriff Department comes out, and maybe someone who made the call gets into an altercation with the officer, or someone's under the influence, and they have a negative interaction. Those people, instead of being sent to jail, are being given the opportunity to do a diversion class about how to have positive interactions with law enforcement. But I asked the teacher of that class, as well as the sheriff, are we tracking the success rates of this program? And they're really not. They said, well, we didn't have enough money for that. Or, they decided not to allocate funds to that. I think it would have been beneficial to see, okay, of all the officers who went through this training, has anything changed post-training? And the people who have been arrested for interfering with law enforcement, are they there? We do basically anecdotally know that they're not arrested for that again, because you don't see them back in the class. But are they having other issues? Are they being arrested for other things? I know all of this takes money, and it's easier said than done. But I think that the county maybe could do more tracking on the success of some of these programs.
Yeah, and speaking from a journalism perspective, numbers are so important to telling that story. Sometimes it's hard for people to put it into context, but the numbers, though, they really tell a story. And that is something that I think would be pretty beneficial to hear more of. Obviously, this project is the first step, but what do you think the next steps will be for this initiative?
So the MacArthur Foundation kind of surprised me in one of my podcast interviews with them. They are exiting the criminal justice reform arena. And I asked them, I said, is this a sign that it was unsuccessful, or that, basically, why are you changing gears? And the answer I got was, generally, they have a lot of different things that they're interested in, and a lot of philanthropic ventures. And this is just one that they are transitioning away from. And they say that was always the plan. But this safety and justice challenge does end, and this is pretty much the end of it now. The county will get some continued support from the MacArthur Foundation. I think it's for 2 more years, but I maybe don't quote me on that. But the county will get continued support from the MacArthur Foundation for several more months. But the flow of the grant money has stopped, and I think tonight, hopefully, we will have that discussion of where do we take this from here, and how does the county not lose the momentum that they already have when the grant dollars go away. Now, they have said, many people, in fact, all of these programs, they brought in social workers in the public defender's office. They expanded their monitoring. They have more ankle monitors and a different way of doing that. And they say that all of these new programs will be sustained because they actually saved money. By having fewer people in the jail, that does save costs overall. So, this has been kind of absorbed into the general budget. And they say that all of the programs that were brought forth by MacArthur will be able to be maintained. Of course, we'll just have to see.
I guess we will be waiting and seeing what the county does and what is learned from this initiative. And I appreciate you joining me to talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
And that's this week's show. To learn more about this initiative, visit WGTE.org. Or to hear Jason's podcast, just search for it wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching, and have a great start to your week on Monday.